This meeting is being recorded. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Edna White, your host for today, and this is Keeping It Real with Edna White. This is a talk video that gets your attention. It's an in-depth interview with hard-hitting questions about taboo topics being covered from local personalities from all walks of life. We talk about the highs and the lows in their lives and in their business. So don't forget to subscribe, share, and turn the notification bell on so you don't miss an episode. And today I am truly honored to today's guest, Steve Kidd. Hello and welcome to the show.
Hi, and thanks for having me, Edna.
Did you hear me? Oh,
I did.
I think
I
we're a
did.
little
Can you hear me?
slow there, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. So, how do you, Steve Kidd, show up in the world?
Well, that's fun. I'm a third generation minister, an international
Okay.
best-selling author of 20 books and counting. And more than anything, I get to be able to help people bring their message out in the world. Worked with thousands of individuals to write, publish, market their books to bestseller and beyond. And that's exciting because that's reached more than 1 million people with their books and their message. That's kind of a little bit of how I show up in the world.
Wonderful. Okay. And you said you've written how many books?
I personally have written 20 myself, and I've
Okay.
worked with several thousand individuals writing their
Okay.
books.
Okay. Tell us how that experience was for you as an author to really get your message out and just share with us how that felt.
It's so funny, actually. My first book was totally an accident. I was, everybody has a free giveaway on their website, and I was
Yeah.
writing that. And by the time I got done, it was about 120 pages, a little
Oh,
bit
wow.
longer than you want in a real quick, little thing.
Yeah.
And so I actually, a good friend of mine, one of my oldest mentors, Dr. Donald Joy, went through it and helped me turn it into book form. And I launched it and then went back and actually reiterated it and broke it into a 10-book series because it was just, there was so much more to be expounded on. But it was so cool. There's nothing like the day that your book comes and you've got it. I've got my next
Oh,
book
yeah.
here, and you can actually hold on to your book and it's like, and
Yeah.
that's me on the cover,
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's almost like giving birth, like you've written all these things down and now you're giving birth to this beautiful, beautiful baby. And it's the
Oh yeah,
most beautiful thing in the whole world, right?
absolutely. That's a good
Did you
connection to it.
have some like, downtime, and any doubts like when you started writing at all?
Well, I mean, because I've written about 100 plus songs prior to that. And I
Okay.
spent a lot of time writing a lot of things. Um, and like you said, I originally was intending it to just be a free giveaway. So my
Hmm.
expectations for the book were really, really low. I think I
Okay.
met and exceeded that. And, but I do understand that because then with the next book that I brought out, I was like, well, what if nobody likes that? What if nobody wants to receive it? What if the things that I think are hilarious in it really aren't that funny?
Right. Yeah. You have a whole lot of self-doubt when you start putting the story out because
Oh yeah.
like you said, you don't know who's going to like it. There's some people for everybody, right? There's some people will love what you do. It's just the nature of the game. Um, which one of your books is your favorite? Which one?
Oh, oh gosh. I mean, the easy answer is to say that my last book, Bestseller is Only the Beginning, is my
Right.
favorite. But I got to tell you honestly, I think my favorite is the book that I wrote that's called Romeo, the Suicidal Parakeet. It's
Oh,
based off of, it's actually cartoon style done.
okay.
And it's based off of an actual parakeet that we had back when my kids were little that used to, for whatever reason, drop himself on his head. I don't know why he did it. Um,
Wow.
but I'd been and that was, oh gosh, that was probably 15 years ago now. But
Mhm.
ever since then, I've been like, why did that crazy bird do that? And so I began to put words in his mouth and start using, and a lot of it is kind of, modern events. Some of it is just general things, but a lot of it's,
Yeah.
kind of current affairs, like,
Yeah.
wearing masks or things like that, because I did it during COVID,
Hmm.
so just a lot of fun with it, with the whole concept of what could be going through this silly bird's head that he would,
Yes. Yeah.
be seemingly suicidal,
Yeah, and you know what, that's really creative to kind of like give what he was doing some words, some real words. That's great. Um, you talked about helping other people write their message out. Tell us something about that and your experience.
Well, like I said, I've worked with thousands upon thousands of people. I love doing it. There's that
Hmm.
amazing moment. You talked about like giving birth. It's funny that you use that because I always use that with people because there's that night before and that fear
Uh-huh.
of, well, yeah, but what if? I know Steve said that he always makes people bestsellers, but what if I'm the one person who's the thing that breaks his 100% success rate? So that's always fun to walk them through that. But the best part of it is to see whether it's my then 8-year-old granddaughter or people that are in their late 90s and everywhere in between, multi-billionaires, stay-at-home moms, doesn't matter
Right.
who you are. Everybody has something that's significant that needs to be shared to the world. And it's so cool to get to be just a little tiny piece of that.
Yeah. And a tiny piece could be as small as what? What's your tiniest piece that you've ever worked with someone that made it monumental?
Well, the tiniest piece I've done is, I've just, well, no, actually, the tiniest piece is I have my Write Your Bestseller in 1 hour workshop. It's literally one
Hmm.
hour.
Right.
And it's a working workshop. We will get you all the way through every element of what you need to do to write your book. And I know of several of my followers that have written as much as a dozen books just from what we teach in that. So that would be the tiniest piece. The next tiniest would be, somebody that just brings me on as a consultant for a half an hour or something like that
Right.
to
Right.
pick my brain.
Right. So walk us through the process of the workshop that you have.
Well, so the workshop, what we're going to talk about is what kind of book should you write? Who should the book be for? And then we break
Mhm.
it down into every single book, fiction or nonfiction, has 4 basic elements to it, 4 sections, if you will. Those aren't
Mhm.
necessarily chapters, but those are the sections of it. And we
Right.
walk them through. And that's, number one, you have to create that know, like, and trust in yourself. Or like I said, in a fiction book, that would be you want the
Right.
people to love the character. And then second is the meat and potatoes of it. If you're teaching in a book, this is where we're gonna tell them what we're gonna tell them, and then teach it
Right.
to them, and then tell them what we told them. That's the main teaching part. And then the third is always, if you think about in a 3-act play, it would be what we call the second act. It's the downturn. We've all had the downsides, the what if you don't,
Mhm.
what if I decide I just want to stay this way? All right, we
Yeah.
talk about that. And then last is always action, whether it be the outcome or the do this next, or give the people one little thing that they can do from what they've taken in the book. That's the whole hour in about 2 minutes.
Okay. And when you're teaching this, what's the hardest challenge that most authors have in part of that process? What's the most challenging?
Well, and I'm going to steal two, even though you asked me for one,
Okay,
which is
that's
totally
fine.
unfair. First of all, of course, obviously, it's that self doubt. It's
Yeah.
we all have it, whether you want to call it imposter syndrome or whatever. I heard
Right.
Michelle Obama talking about, just before her book came out, she was like, who the heck would want to read a book from me?
Yeah.
Even though she's Michelle Obama, you know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
We all have that. And so we need to understand just how significant and special each of us is. That would be
Right.
one of it. And then the second one is all of us writes too much. It seems counterintuitive, but
Oh,
almost everybody that I've ever worked with, they've already written out a book series. Whether it's just they just have an outline or even an idea, they want to pack everything they know into
yeah.
that one book. And and that's just overwhelming to people. What we really want to do is
Yeah.
take one point, make it really clear, give the people a clear
Mhm.
action from that, and then give them the next point in book two.
Okay. So really, if you have too much, you can actually make another book. Because I know that happened to me. It's like I wanted to tell them everything, about it, and I didn't want to miss a beat. And I was just writing and writing, and then I realized, hey, this is too much.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so
Hmm.
then we just help the people identify what is the book series, where should we break it
Hmm.
up, how many books do we have here.
Right, right. Okay. All right. And how do you, is it a team full of you, team, or just you trying to kind of pull that out for the,
Oh no, I definitely have an amazing team of
right.
people. I'm
I would
my
guess.
yeah, my unique brilliance in it is really helping people identify their who, and then doing that interview with them. I always say,
Okay.
I don't know why God gives us the gifts that He does, but that one's mine, and I really love it.
Hmm.
It's just to really
Yeah.
have a conversation that often feels more overly casual. The person will be like, "Does this make
Hmm.
any sense?" And
Yeah.
then out of that, we take that and then that transcript goes to a story development editor who can then
Hmm.
take and weave that into a story, as well as identify these are the places we're missing, these are the things
Right.
that you didn't complete for us, and so that way we can have the complete information. And then we have editors that'll make sure all the commas are
Hmm.
in the right place and that kind of thing,
Right.
graphics
Right.
people to do the cover for you, formatters to format it for both print form as well as ebook form. And then of course we do all the search engine optimization so that it can be up on
Hmm.
Amazon, and it absolutely will rank, and we make them a bestseller.
Right. Has there ever been a time that maybe someone that has come to you and says, "Hey, I want to independently do this," because maybe it's a cost factor for them? Have you ever, transitioned someone into that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a class that I teach that helps people be able to do all of it themselves. I do
Right.
consulting where the person just basically, I'm just essentially giving them, okay, now this is what you need to do next. So we're not actually teaching them what to do as much as just seeing what they're doing and giving them some suggestions. I work
Right.
with a lot of people who already have their book completely done, and they just now need to know at least how to make it a bestseller, if not the continued and ongoing marketing of it. So it just depends on, I'm going to meet anybody wherever they're at and help them with whatever they need.
Hmm. Right. Right. And so your company is a company.
Yes.
What's the name of your company? I'm
Name of
sorry.
my company is Thriving Bestsellers LLC.
Oh, I like it. Okay, so you create bestsellers for those that come to you, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's great. So, what's one of the powerful questions you ask during that interview or that conversation?
Well, more than anything, the question is, what is that one thing? What is the thing that if you can't tell somebody anything else, what is the thing
Mm,
you got to make sure they absolutely know? And then a lot of times people will say, well, I'm not sure. And then we dig into
right,
and help them really be able to see that they did know it. It's just a matter of
right.
really realizing what that thing is.
Okay, okay. Are there some of your clients, have they ever gone to like screenplays or things like that onto bigger things when they have written their books?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have, whether you talk about, one of the ladies, when she wrote the book, she intended to hope to do more with it. She now has multiple different stage plays that she actually does
Hmm.
with the books that she writes. The first one was
Right.
called Man Monster, and she's
Hmm.
traveled significantly around the country with doing that. A couple of the people either have or are in the process of going all the way to actually movies. Not to mention the fact that I also did a book with a guy that is a professional screenwriter, meaning that
Hmm.
he's worked in Hollywood for like the last 20 years, specifically. So, we've done that kind of stuff. Yeah, pretty much anything you can imagine. We've seen people do it. And then of course I've got people that have gotten
Okay,
on the
that's
Today
good.
Show and
It's
been
really,
able to,
yeah, it's really difficult.
yeah.
Okay. So in your journey as I would say a publisher, right? Book coach, um, what is the real meaning for you with this? What's the real meaning for you?
So more than anything else, it's
Mm.
about the person that the book's going to reach.
Okay.
And I always say the person because, your book is going to reach probably millions, but it's always about that one. I mean, first of all, it's overwhelming
Right.
if we try to think about how can I help a million
Hmm.
people? But if we can think about just helping just one person,
Just one, right? Yeah.
and it's about the difference that it makes in their life, because all of us know what it's like to be in a place where we're desperate for an answer. We need it. We may be up at two,
Hmm.
3 o'clock in the morning searching Google to try to find some kind of answer for this thing. And it's just not coming. And we all know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I love to be able to be the one who facilitates the person who has that answer, putting it out in such a way that when that person is desperately searching, they
Right.
find the answer they need from the person that was always meant to serve and give that to them.
Yeah. That's good. So let's talk about and switch the gears a little bit. Once the book is out, and I always wanted to ask this of someone, how are you I guess you're preparing your clients to get these reviews, and sometimes you're going to get bad reviews. How do you start to shape them and really get down to, okay, you're going to hear some bad things, you're going to see some bad things. How do you help them, work through the bad review, work through a question they may not have an answer for in the review?
So, breaking that down into two questions. Number
Yes.
one is, the answer is all press is good press. That's an old marketing term that we've always
Okay.
used. But
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
somebody's
yes.
talking about you, they're talking about you. So that means your name's out there.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's good. Good point.
Amazon just algorithmically 10 is their magic number. They don't care whether
Mhm.
all 10 of those reviews gave you a one or all 10 of them gave you a five. They need
Right.
you. It triggers something in their system when you have 10 reviews. So that's part of it. Is it's just a matter of, and secondarily, I heard
Hmm.
Don Crowther, one of my authors and a person that I've interviewed before. He said it best. He
Okay.
said the best thing you can do is have somebody that identifies themselves as not being your ideal client. That is
Ah,
them giving you a bonus. It's a real bonus because then you don't waste time on somebody who isn't going to listen to what you say, doesn't believe what you're going to
right.
say, doesn't want to work with you. And rather than a lot of us, myself especially, we
Hmm.
tend to try really hard to make everybody love us, and it's just
Right.
not possible. So it's really them doing us a favor when they do that. Now, that doesn't mean that to get to the second part of it, when that review comes through and somebody gives you a low rating, that you're not like,
Hmm.
because almost always it means that it doesn't get it, that they didn't really understand what you were meaning from that. Um,
Hmm.
but a good friend of mine, the way that she handles it, I think is the best I've ever seen. And that's that. And usually you just don't reply to it. Okay. When you're talking
Right.
reviews on Amazon, but
Right.
if it
Right.
was on like Facebook or something like that, where it was in a
Right. Right.
conversation, what she always
Hmm.
does is she always thanks him. It's like, thank you for the feedback. I
Right.
really appreciate that you spent your time to be able to do this. Um, and thank you also for letting me know that what I'm doing won't help you in this world, but please
Hmm.
know that I'm rooting for your success. And so
Right.
you leave them totally with their dignity intact without
Yeah.
allowing their stuff to attach to you.
Yeah.
And then go back and look at all the other people, whether it's one more or it's a million more,
Right.
that you really have helped, and reread those. I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of it. Is we really need to keep track of the people that tell us how great we are, because we always remember the ones that tell us how much we how much we blew it, but we
Hmm.
don't remember the people that tell us
Yeah.
how wonderful we are.
Right, right. And that, yeah, we don't. And we just see that one beaming one. You know?
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good answer. Um, I wanted to go back to you as a publisher, right? And I know that we often talk about, publishers, and I've had some bad experiences with publishers, and I had bad experiences with independent publishing. Um, Tell us what a publisher is not. Your type of publisher. Tell me what he's not. We know what it's supposed to be, but I want to know what it's not.
Well, what I'm not and what I don't want to do is I'm not the arbiter or the judge of what you're doing in the world. I'm here to
Okay.
help facilitate you, whatever it is that you were called to do.
Okay.
It's not my place to judge that and to tell you
Right.
your words aren't worthy. That's the number
Right.
one piece of that.
Okay.
And then secondarily is um, I'm not looking to own your stuff, and that
Right.
is the biggest, most dangerous part of it. Is that
Hmm.
almost always in the publishing industry, whether you're talking traditional publishers,
Right.
independent publishers, hybrids, book
Right.
coaches, all of that kind of thing is
Hmm.
um, and most of them are very well intended, so I'm not trying to in any way trash them, but the
Right.
things that they do, they end up actually taking the ownership of your book and its content away from you.
Hmm.
And then, when for example, company goes out of business, you're stuck in the place of trying to prove to Amazon that you are who you always were, because
Right.
Amazon doesn't have a relationship with you; they have a relationship with them. And so
Hmm.
that's the real big one that you want to watch out. And that's what I'm not somebody who has any interest even in owning any bit of your content, or controlling any bit of your narrative. Just to
Gotcha.
help.
Gotcha. And I know that there are some publishing companies out there that insist that you pay them a fee to publish your book. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and if that's something that anyone that's listening today would consider or should consider?
And it's important to note that I'm really a marketing company with a strong publishing industry coaching
Gotcha.
product
That's
versus
nice.
being a publisher.
Okay.
So absolutely, if anybody wants to work with me, I'm a service, so I'm
Right.
gonna
Gotcha.
I'm gonna ask for money, and do specific things.
But
Um,
you're more in the
and
marketing side,
yeah,
right?
but we're going to be talking about the marketing. I mean, and
Yes.
for me, editing, story development, helping you come up, I'm thinking of it totally from the marketing aspect of all
Gotcha.
of
That's
that.
important. Yeah.
Um,
That's important.
but in most of those people's cases, it really boils down to either one, aside from writing coaches, because those are
Hmm.
coaches. They're coaching you on how to do writing. But
Hmm.
most of your publishers that are putting themselves off as publishers, their money comes from how many books they sold you. And
Okay.
that's really so. Almost always, not always, but almost always, the package is going to include certain number of printed books or
Okay.
your book in a certain format. And the truth of the matter is like I said, I mean, the Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour workshop, I give you
Hmm.
essentially everything. You can go out and do it all yourself. And the
Right.
class that I teach, it gives you so much that you can go out and literally teach a class on how to do everything that I do. I mean, I'll just give
Wow.
you that level of information.
Wow.
Um, but for most of them, it really is about either they want to control your book,
Right.
on purpose or inadvertently, because a lot of them, they're
Right.
just doing it to be helpful, but they don't know that they've messed you up.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and then, like I said, about really just selling you a box of books.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a big distinction, and thank you for telling me about the marketing side. I really like that part, the marketing
Yeah.
side, because you want to be up there in number one best-selling.
Yeah.
Is there such as a deadline for manuscript at all?
Well, deadline, no, but here's the thing that we don't really understand. Number one, bestseller is
Mhm.
only the beginning. Bestseller is the beginning of the journey. It's It's not something you want to achieve in a year, 3 years, 6 years from now. It's something that we're talking about like 30 to 90 days from this moment,
Oh, wow.
assuming that you have absolutely nothing done from point
Right.
zero. It's a 30 to 90 day process, really. In
Gotcha.
fact, I'll go so far as to say that if it's taking you longer than 90 days to have your book from start to being published and a bestseller, there are things going on in your life. Now, that's not me criticizing, I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
holiday
Absolutely.
season happens, family comes over, the
Right.
weather goes, your computer breaks down,
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff happens in all of our lives. Um, but if you just really look at what is my time frame, it's really a 30 to 90 day process, and anything beyond that is either
Hmm.
again getting you to overwrite. They're making you write more words for the sake of more words, not for more
I
help,
got you.
or they're putting things in it that are making the process that can be a fairly non-painful, I don't know if I'll say easy, but non-painful process into something that's
Okay.
difficult.
Hmm. Okay. All right. And have you ever done any audiobooks?
I have.
Yeah.
In most cases, I do encourage and help the authors actually do the own audio for theirs,
Okay.
because a lot of us as authors want to be, whether it's on a podcast like this or on a speaking
Hmm.
stage or a TED talk.
Right.
And there's nothing worse than you get, some amazing sounding voice. I have this friend of mine that has this beautiful baritone voice. I mean, I'd love to have him be the reader of all my books. But then
Hmm.
when you've heard him read my books and I come on the podcast as a first tenor, like I am, you can kind
Right.
of hear, um, then you're like, well, that doesn't sound at all like the guy. And I
Right. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like that guy,
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah.
like if Darth Vader, James Earl Jones' wonderful voice, if they replaced him with somebody that had, like a girl, and I'm not saying that
Right.
you couldn't have a girl be Darth Vader, but that
Yeah.
voice would be just so different,
Different. Yeah. Different. So you do recommend the author doing their own voice
I do,
on the
yes.
audio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, with that said,
Okay.
I do have both access to, as well as I can show you how to be able to find your own readers for it. And there's a lot of people
Okay.
out there who'll do reading for books.
Okay. But does that affect the sales of it? Like having the audio, then meeting you, and then all of a sudden it's different. Does that affect the sales at any time?
So it's about a third, a third, a third as far as print, ebook, and audio. So if you don't have
Okay.
the audiobook, you're going to lose about a third of the market that are
Okay.
only going to get the book and audio.
Got you.
Additionally, only about, and this statistic is about a year old now, but only about 1 in 20 books are available on audio. So
Hmm.
there's less availability, but just as
Got
much demand for
you.
audiobooks.
Hmm.
So from that standpoint, you absolutely want to have it. Um, does that answer what you were asking,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, it does. It does. I'm thinking about the word bestseller because a lot of people use bestseller, and
Right.
I really want clarity on this. What makes a book a bestseller? That's my first question. My second question: how many books do you have to sell in order to be a bestseller?
All right. So first of all, when I talk about bestsellers, I'm absolutely talking about Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon is the only statistically driven bestseller list that I know of. When
Okay.
you talk about New York Times or ones like those are
Right.
editorialized, privately owned magazines or newspapers that
Got
take
you.
information and then say, based off of the information we collected and or our own opinions, this is what we've decided.
Got you.
Amazon's list is a computerized program. It
Got you.
purely and simply wants to tell you what book sold the most. Now, the downside to it is Amazon updates hourly versus once or twice a year.
Got you.
So it's a much more volatile list. But when you go to Amazon's bestseller list, and it's broken down into categories, just like all of the different lists are. When you go to that category's bestsellers,
Hmm.
you're looking at what book sold the best that hour. It's about 8 or 12 hours behind. So
Ah,
if you were looking at Amazon's bestseller list right now, you're seeing what book was selling the best about, 8 to 12 hours ago.
Okay.
And that's if you're in the US. If you're in any one of the foreign countries that Amazon's in, it's about 30 to 36 hours behind. Okay.
Hmm.
But it still is reflecting an hour by hour update. Um,
Gotcha.
what that means is that a book at number 2 sold more books than a book at number 3 during that hour.
Okay.
Means the list is more volatile. So you may be a bestseller for an hour, you may be a bestseller for a day, you may be a bestseller for a week. And of course, again, as a marketer, I have all kinds of things that I talk to you. In fact, that's what my latest book is all about, is now that you're a bestseller, now what? All the things you do
Right.
to re-rank, to continue to rank, to
Oh,
have your
you
book
knew
be
that
up
was going to
there.
be my question next, right?
Right.
You knew that.
um, but you have to start off with that, and you want to
Okay.
start just like
Okay.
a doctor needs to graduate from medical school and be
Hmm.
officially and legally a doctor. Now, you wouldn't
Hmm.
want some kid that graduate well, or old person, doesn't matter how old they are when they
Hmm.
graduate. You don't want a graduate of medical school to be the person that walks into the room when you're really sick,
Yeah.
not by themselves anyway. You want somebody that knows
Yeah.
how to actually
That's what
treat
they're doing.
patients.
Yes.
Bestseller is the same thing. It's a
Okay.
credential that says during this time frame, a third party actually validated that yes, you did
Right.
do the right things marketing wise
Gotcha.
for this book to have sold the best. And it's a top 100 list. Although like 98% of my people are actually all number ones, but technically, when I say 100% success rate, all of them have been on that list, not
Gotcha.
necessarily number one, but
Okay.
almost all of them have all been number ones. And
Okay. And then how many books do you have to sell in order to be number one?
well, and this is where it gets a little tricky,
Okay.
because it really is more about search engine optimization. So Amazon's a
Oh,
search engine, just like Google is, except Amazon's a search engine
okay.
for buying things. And it's about listing your book in the right place and in the right way. One of the biggest mistakes most people make is with their first book is they immediately think, oh, my book is a self-help book. And so they put it in the
Wow.
parent category self-help, because it is going to help a person out. But
Sure.
that isn't really what they're talking about. It might be, for example, there's a wonderful category, women's personal
Hmm.
transformation.
Hmm.
Great book, but that's actually technically a subcategory under spirituality. Not that
Ah,
most of the books in there aren't spiritual books. In other words, they're not talking about
right.
any form of godliness. They're just
Right.
purely talking about personal transformation. But
Right.
that's
Right.
where that category happens to exist in Amazon's SEO. And so it's a
Ah,
matter of understanding where, like all the counseling stuff is under health, fitness, and dieting.
right.
And so if you're a psychologist and you
Hmm.
help childhood, children's developmental psychology stuff,
Right.
that's down underneath our health, fitness, and dieting, which is not where, if you were just
Wow.
searching through Amazon, you would find it, which is why
Right.
you have to have your SEO in place so that when a person says, my child is dealing with autism, um,
Hmm.
you know, that book comes up, like Dr. Allie's, Dr.
Yeah.
Alicia Griffith. She's one of the authors I worked with. Her
Hmm.
her book is called Amazing Gift. She's a medical doctor in that field. She's been in that field for 20 years. After
Right.
being in that field for 10 years, her son was born with autism. And so she's also a mother of an autistic child. And then
Hmm.
she wrote the book, and that was about 4 years ago now. So he's probably 14 or 15 now. But that
Right.
book, even though she was a medical doctor, it wasn't until she
Mm.
had that book that she was
Right.
on the Today Show and Good Morning America.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's great. It's great,
Yeah.
Steve. Um, I have a whole bunch of questions now.
Yeah. Well,
um,
ask away. I'm
so,
here.
so the different tabs. Like, let's just go with the independent person, right? There's all these tabs, and you're right. We hone into the tab that says self help, and we don't really know what they all mean. And then
Right.
we're in a whole different category. That makes so much sense. That's really great information. Really great, because
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. I really didn't. I was always waiting for you to tell me this information and my audience. So, tell us about your project that you have now, or your new book that you have. on the horizon here?
So my new book that just came out, it's actually in my background too, but it's called, and my green screen isn't going to let you see it, but it's called
Okay.
Bestseller is Only the Beginning.
Right. Yeah.
And we really, so many of my authors, they then ask me after they became a bestseller, okay, so now what? Yeah, I'm a bestseller. What
Right.
do I do with it? And so that's what we go into, and we really talk about the end of that whole concept of, what do you do when you graduate from medical school, and now what do you got to learn? And we
Mm-hmm.
begin equating it to, you've now shown and gotten the third party validation that you know your stuff. And now is when you go to work with the marketing and the elements of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so the latest thing that goes along with the book is my ongoing wealth guide. In fact, I
Right.
have a free gift for your people, ongoingwealthguide.com. And that's
Okay.
a 5-step system. It's about 2 pages. It's not long. It's not like a 110-page book.
Okay.
And in that, I have the link to my free Write Your Bestseller in 1 Hour workshop. And I walk
Okay.
them through all 5 of those steps of what you can do to create ongoing wealth. Now, by wealth, I really mean more abundance, meaning that it's not about what the bank balance says today, but rather about living a truly fulfilled, meeting your purpose and meeting the needs of the people you are meant to serve
Right.
kind of a lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
we go through all of that on that. And I even got, on the last page of that whole process for you, I've given people a 15-minute free call with me. All you got to do is just click on the link and schedule it.
Great. And what is that website again?
Ongoingwealthguide.com.
Okay. So audience, you have that information. It'll be also in the comments section of this video. And take advantage of this because this is really great information. And I know some of us who are um, in the independent publishing, this is great information and you need the guidance of someone who has marketing experience, which I like. I like the idea of the marketing, the marketing part. Because when we all were doing, or we're all doing this as independents, like, okay, we have to market everything. We miss the points that you just talked about, the SEO. We miss all of those points. So this is a great resource for you. Steve is a great resource for you to get going in the right movement of writing your book. I think this is really great information because we do have a lot of followers who are authors and who are business owners. And I often talk about entrepreneurship because I take writing a book really seriously. And when I have a book, I have a goal. Can we talk about having a goal when you have a book, and you should have a goal for it, like anything else?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, because if you think about the bestseller being the foundation of your building, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the same thing as, when you're going to build a house, you want to know what the whole house is going to look like. You don't want to
Right.
just put down a slab of concrete and,
Right.
then go sit on it and say, hey, look how great this house is. You need to
Right.
have a plan. There are multiple different ways you could make money from your book. You could turn
Right.
it into a course. You could get
Right.
speaking gigs. You could work with corporate people. And the
Right.
list goes on of different ways that you can
Sure.
monetize it.
Sure.
But you want to know up front, who am I? What am I doing? What's that uniqueness that's me in the world, so
Right.
that the book then really complements it. When you do it, you can do like Dr. Dreon Birch did, where, and granted, he was selling to doctors, so his price point was a little bit higher, but he brought his book out and then sold $160,000 worth of people into his course in the first
Right.
60 days after his book came out, because he had
Yeah.
the course all ready to go and he was ready,
Right.
and and really took it from there.
Right. And is it important? I know you have 20 something books, and so do I. Each of those books all don't have the same goal. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah, correct. Because I've written everywhere from, well, I call them children's books, but it's really more like books to entertain the parents while they're reading books to
Right.
kids. To, of course,
Yeah. Hmm.
I've got a couple of Christian books that I've written and a couple of
Right.
business books, and just different elements, and they're kind of across the board of every little aspect of marketing. So even each one of them,
Mhm.
Obviously I'm talking very differently in finding your purpose in life
Right.
than I am in what to do after you
Okay.
become a
Right.
bestseller.
Right. Well, this is very good information about the marketing side of publishing, which we all need. And I know, audience, you're going to really love this information. Steve, can you tell us how we can contact you, how my audience can get in touch with you, and internationally?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, my website is thrivingbestsellers.com. I am Ask Steve Kidd on, pretty much all the major social medias. My
Hmm.
face looks just like my face looks like here on the video, in all of them. And then, of course, on Facebook, I have Thriving Bestsellers as a business page as well. Um,
Hmm.
or if none of that works for you, shoot me an email. AskSteveKidd@gmail.com is my private
Wonderful.
personal email.
Hmm.
And I'll answer it whether on my computer or on my phone. I love helping authors out and helping bring people into the world.
Great. That's great. Well, Steve, this brings us to the end of the show. Is there anything that you want to encourage any of our audience about today? Your final words and final thoughts.
Absolutely. I want to encourage you, even remind you, somebody's waiting on you. There's somebody that made a bad choice last week, last month, over the course of the last decade, because they're looking for information that you
Hmm.
do so easily, you probably don't even think of it as that thing you should put out on the world. But somebody's waiting for that information, and they're going to keep making that mistake until you
Yeah.
share it with the world. Remember, everything that we have in life is only as good as we give it away. So share your uniqueness, your wonderfulness, because you do have a purpose, and the world needs you.
That, with that being said, I can't add nothing to that. That's a very good way to end the show. And we thank you all for being here. Look for us next Monday at 11 a.m. Bye for now.